The Conservatives today were campaigning in a couple of ridings in Atlantic Canada, currently held by the Liberals. At a hockey arena near St. John's in a riding held by Liberal Scott Andrews, Harper repeated a promise that his government will make sure there are defibrillators in hockey arenas across the country. And he finished the day in Cape Breton, where the Tories hope to upset Liberal Mark Akin. But Harper today also had to try to deflect attacks launched by the Liberals that his government would roll back abortion access rights in Canada. Now, here's what happened. The Liberals, behind in the polls now, just as they were in 2006, found a transcript and tape of a speech that Conservative MP Brad Trost gave in his Saskatoon riding. Trost was bragging that his government was cutting funding to Planned Parenthood, even though such a decision apparently had not been made. And when we spoke to Planned Parenthood today, we found out that their application for federal funds said nothing at all about abortion. Now, the Liberals, in a leak with, I thought, exquisite timing, gave this information to the Toronto Star and Le Devoir, and last night, as Harper's plane was in the air, the story hit the web with the clear suggestion that the Conservatives had a hidden agenda to take away abortion access rights here in Canada. When the Harper campaign plane landed in St. John's, Newfoundland, the campaign summoned reporters after midnight in an attempt to shoot down this story. The Conservatives have said in 3 campaigns now that, some may like it, some may not, it will not take any action on the abortion issue. Conservatives themselves will tell you that when the Liberals launched this hidden agenda on abortion issue at them in 2006, it did in fact play on the fears of enough women voters that the Tories almost lost in 2006. And the Liberals are clearly hoping for the same thing this time. So this morning, Harper once again had to spell out his position.
I think I've been very clear as party leader. I think I've been clear as Prime Minister, and I think our government has been clear, notwithstanding people who may feel differently. As long as I'm Prime Minister, we are not reopening the abortion debate.
Meanwhile, the Liberals were furiously pumping up press releases and talking points trying to boost their claim that Harper cannot be trusted on this issue. Liberal leader Michael Ignatieff, campaigning in Montreal today, was asked about his position on abortion.
As a political matter, as a party matter, we have always and will always defend a woman's right to choose. And these Planned Parenthood stories are absolutely what Canadian women think, wait a minute, what are these guys up to? What have they got in mind? Where are they going with this? And we're saying, let's be clear. If you vote for the Liberal Party of Canada, you will be voting for a party that defends a woman's right to choose.
Okay, but let's back up a bit. Ignatieff says a vote for Liberals is a vote for the pro-choice side, which may be a bit of a surprise to about 1/4 of his own caucus, including many Toronto area Liberal MPs who, through their voting record in the House of Commons or through their advocacy activities, are not comfortable with abortion access rights in Canada and would like laws to restrict or eliminate those rights. In fact, in a previous parliament, a Liberal, Paul Steckley, since retired, actually introduced a bill to restrict abortion rights. So let's talk about the politics of this issue. Dave Quist is the executive director of the Institute of Marriage and Family in Canada, and he's also a former political staffer for some Conservative MPs. And one of the jobs of the Institute is to talk to MPs about changing abortion policy in Canada. And yet, despite the fact that it's a big C Conservative party in Canada, the small C Conservatives who support it have explicitly laid out in their policy resolutions not to take any action on this issue. So Dave, given your connections and all the things you know about this, it must be frustrating sometime for your group that you can't move the ball forward a bit on this.
Well, it is frustrating, to be honest. This is an issue that's existed for many years. And quite frankly, it's not just the Conservative Party, it's all the parties. This is an issue that goes back for many years, since 1988, with the Morgentaler decision at the Supreme Court of Canada. And the Supreme Court at that time basically said, we're not going to change anything right now, except we're going to stop the law. Over to Parliament, now it's up to you to do something with this. So many Canadians don't even realize that we don't actually have abortion law in the country right now.
And this, I was just going to say, this is frustrating for your group to move the ball forward, but it's just as frustrating for those who are pro-choice advocates fighting to preserve abortion or extend abortion access rights. It's just as frustrating for them because we have this legal vacuum in Canada where there really isn't any laws that are there. I mean, I understand essentially a law was struck down, I think during Mulroney's time, and nothing was, and it was never replaced.
That's correct. It's a legal vacuum. That's a great way to describe it. And in fact, the issue is such that Canadians, about 2/3 of Canadians, plus 60%, are looking to see some restriction on abortion. But obviously there are advocates at one end of that continuum and the other as well. What is really frustrating for most people right now is that we can't even have that discussion in Canada at this point. Here we are coming into the last couple of weeks of the election, and the A word is being thrown around again.
Well, it's used as a weapon. It's not used as let's have a discussion. It's a weapon. In this case, the Liberals, and they probably have good reason to believe it's a weapon that works. I know you mentioned 2/3 of, polls have shown 2/3 of Canadians are at least uncomfortable with the current abortion access, but I think I've seen polls similar that about the same number also say, let's not touch it, let's not do anything with it too.
There seems to be maybe roughly a 20-25% at either end of the spectrum. One that says let's just leave everything alone as it is right now with no restriction. 25% at the other end that say we want full restriction, and there's that big mushy middle that say we're not comfortable where we are, but we'd like to have some restrictions as well. But that elephant in the room says we can't even have that discussion.
Now, for those here in Ottawa, and you know this, of course, you're here in Ottawa as well, once a year, folks who would like to, anti-abortion groups, pro-life groups, gather on the Hill, big rally, 6,000, 10,000 people, and they're often met by members of what are called the Pro-Life Caucus. This is a group of MPs from at least 2 parties, we don't know how many, and one of the things I find remarkable is a few of them will identify themselves as pro-life MPs. Rod Bernews from Winnipeg is one, Maurice Vellacott, Paul Szabo from the Liberals, for example, but a lot of them are, it's like an AA meeting. Don't tell anyone I'm coming to this meeting, and that I find remarkable, that they don't want voters to know how they stand on the issue. Right.
There are a number of them, and I've been told, because I've never been to one of their meetings, but I have been told that there are party members from each of the different parties that contribute to the Pro-Life Caucus at different points in time. But you're quite right, on the March for Life, which is usually coming up in the spring, there's many that are represented, but not all of them are there at that particular time. That is an opportunity for them to stand clear where they are on the positions. We can say whether they're right or wrong, that doesn't really matter, but they're willing to stand forward. And I would encourage this discussion to take place in Canada sometime in the very near future. During a campaign is actually a good time to start.
Now, today we heard both Liberal leader Michael Ignatieff and Conservative leader Stephen Harper. They got asked about this. And I think Michael Ignatieff was pretty clear in that he says a vote for the Liberals is a vote for a pro-choice party. Stephen Harper's answer is it's a little more complex. And I assume both of these men are coming to their opinions, honestly, with all the faith. But I wondered if we might like to hear a bit more from the Prime Minister, from Stephen Harper, about where he thinks there should be some fine-tuning, if at all, in our laws.
Well, certainly in Michael Ignatieff's case, I know that there are going to be MPs in his caucus that are uncomfortable with that statement.
Absolutely.
That are going to disagree with him. The Prime Minister, on the other hand, has been consistent with that, although there are many members of his caucus that would disagree and say, no, it's time we had that discussion, whether it's through private members' bills or ideally through a government bill, certainly in the past or in the future, if you should be so fortunate to win the election in their minds as well.
Now, this is the $60,000, or one of the $60,000 questions in this campaign, Dave. If there is a majority Conservative government, does your job get any easier in terms of moving your sort of legislative program forward?
Well, it opens up another door in the sense that if we go to members of Parliament with new research, with new polling, or whatever it may be, and we say, look, 2/3 of Canadians are not comfortable with our current existing lack of legislation under this topic. Why can't we have this discussion? In the past, you can hear them all saying, well, we've had minority parliaments, and the last 3 governments have all been minority. At that point, if they happen to win as a majority government, that excuse is gone, and it's time to actually have that discussion. Whether or not the discussion is fruitful from a pro-life perspective or not doesn't really matter. Let's have that discussion in a full, forthright, and open manner.
The last thing I want to just bring up was in 2006, when the Conservatives had their policy convention in Montreal. I was there. I very much got the sense the Conservatives said hands off on this issue because they wanted to win. They wanted to they didn't want this to be an issue for them to win an election. Now, they have a policy convention coming up this year. I think it could still be there. And I wonder now, is it the time for the party, the grassroots, to revisit this issue? They've won already, and maybe that's off their back. Does it get easier to convince the party?
Well, certainly, if the policy initiative comes from the grassroots, they at least need to look at it and analyze it. Then it's up to democracy within their party to vote on it to say whether they're going to change it or whether they're going to open up to that discussion. The other parties have opportunities to do that as well. And so I don't see this as really just being a conservative issue. Rather, this is a lack of open discussion around this issue from all the parties. Different parties have been in Parliament since 1988, different governments, different leaders, and none of them have wanted to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
No, that's true. All right, Dave Quist, thank you so much for joining us with
Pleasure.
the Institute of Marriage and Family. Marriage comes before family. That's the way to remember it. Thanks very much, Dave.
Good to be with you.